Bonjour! Thank you for joining me today for Princess Storytime. Today I'll be reading from 50 famous fairy stories. Today's story is one I've never heard before. It's kind of a silly one too. It's called How the Sea Became Salt. In a small village far over the sea, there once lived two brothers. One was rich, but the other was very poor. One Christmas Eve, the poor brother found he had nothing at all in the house to eat, neither crust nor crumbs. He went to the rich brother and begged for something, even a little flour. The rich brother was selfish as well as rich, and he did not care to be bothered with the poor brother. However, he said, "There is a side of fat bacon in the smokehouse you may have, but know this, it is the last thing you shall get from me. Never come here again to ask for anything." The poor brother took the bacon, thanked his brother, and set out for home. He was going along the path in the forest when a little old man stepped out in front of him. "Good evening," said the poor brother. "Good evening to you," said the little old man. "Where are you going with that bacon?" "I am on my way home to take it to my wife. We have nothing to eat in the house, and it is Christmas Eve." "If you will go down the path a little way," the old man directed him, "you will find an enchanter's palace. Go inside and you will be surrounded by the enchanter's imps. They will want to buy the bacon for you, for there is nothing enchanter's imps like better than fat bacon. But do not sell it to them for money. Ask for the old mill that stands behind the door in exchange for the meat. Bring the mill back to me, and I will show you how to use it." The poor brother went on and came to the castle. On entering, he was surrounded by the imps clamoring for the bacon. They tried to make all sorts of bargains with him, but he insisted on having the old mill behind the door. Finally, the imps gave him the mill and ran off with the meat. The poor brother took the mill under his arm and went back to the little old man, who showed him how the mill was to be used. The brother had but to say, "Grind, mill, grind," and name what he wanted. But to make the mill stop after he had used it, it had to be set in a certain position. The poor man thanked the stranger for his help and went home. It was dark before he reached there, and his wife was worried about what might have happened to him. "I've been waiting all day," the wife said, "and there's neither bread nor bone in the whole house. I am so hungry that I am almost dead." "Tell your hunger goodbye," the man said, "for see what I have brought you." He put the mill on the table and said, "Grind, mill, grind." Asking for a holiday supper, he turned the handle. Immediately, a cloth was spread and all sorts of good dishes were set out on the table. The wife looked on with awe. "Where did you get such a mill?" she asked. "Do not bother your head about it," was the only answer he would give. How they enjoyed their supper! It had been a long time since they had so many good things to eat. 3 days later, the poor brother gave a party, to which he invited all his friends and his rich brother as well. "Where did you get all this wealth so suddenly?" the rich brother asked. "Only Christmas Eve you were begging for something to eat, and now you entertain like a duke." "I found it behind the door," was all the brother answered, for he did not intend to tell his secret. One night, however, he could hold his tongue no longer, and he told his brother about the mill. From that time on, the rich brother tried in every way to get possession of the mill. At last his brother promised that if he could keep the mill until harvest time, he would then sell it to his brother for 300 pounds. The poor brother made good use of the mill that summer. He tried to think of everything he could possibly want for many years to come. When harvest time came, he gave the mill to his brother and told him what to say to start it grinding. But he did not tell him how to stop the mill, and his brother was so anxious to get the treasure that he did not stop to ask. The morning after the rich man got the mill, he sent his wife and servants to the field, saying he would stay home himself and get the dinner. When dinner time came, he set the mill on the table and said, "Grind, grind, serve up herrings and milk soup." The mill at once began to grind out herrings and milk soup. The rich man filled enough bowls for dinner and then said, "You can stop now." But the mill did not stop. The man filled all the pots and pans, but still the mill went on. Herrings and milk soup, herrings and milk soup all over the place. Whoa, called the man. Halt! Stop! Quit! But the mill kept grinding on, and out the herrings and milk soup came. They ran down on the floor. They flooded the room. The man opened the door, and the herrings and milk soup ran out into the hall. The rich man flopped and floundered through the sticky stuff, opened the front door, and the milk soup and herrings ran out into the garden. Meanwhile, his wife, at work in the fields, wondered why her husband had not called her to dinner. Perhaps he was having trouble preparing the meal. "Let us go home," she said to the reapers. "My husband must be finding it difficult to get the dinner." So the wife and reapers started for home. As they came to the garden, they saw the river of milk soup and herrings rushing toward them. In the midst of it all was the man, floundering about and holding the mill over his head. "Take care that this dinner does not drown you," he called to the workers, and then hurried on his way back to the house of his poor brother. "Take it back," he begged. "Stop it, or the whole village will be flooded with milk soup and herrings." The poor brother took the mill and stopped it, but he charged 300 pounds for doing so. The only thing the rich brother could do was pay the sum, for he was at the mercy of his brother. With this money and what he had saved, the poor brother now built a beautiful house. It stood on the seashore, and the walls were covered with gold, so it could be seen for many miles out at sea. The house and its owner became known far and wide, and people from all over the world came to see it. Among those who came to this wonderful house was a sea captain. He had heard about the magic mill and wished to see it. He asked if the mill could grind out salt and was told it certainly could. "How fine it would be if I had that mill," the captain thought. "I would no longer have to sail the seas, but could stay in port and still have a ship always loaded with cargo. I could just ask the mill to grind salt and my ship would be filled. How much money I would make!" The sea captain pleaded and begged to buy the mill. At first the brother refused, but at last he consented to sell it for a great sum of money. As soon as the captain had the mill in his possession, he hurried away for fear the owner would change his mind and demand the return of the mill. The captain left without waiting to learn how to stop the mill. As soon as he was back on the ship, he set down the mill and said, "Grind, mill, grind, fill my ship with salt." And the mill began to grind salt. Soon the hold of the ship was filled with salt, and piles of it stood on the deck. The ship began to creak and groan under the weight. "Stop, stop," yelled the captain. But the mill went right on grinding. It ground and ground and ground salt and still more salt. Finally, the ship broke down under the weight and sank to the bottom of the sea. But the mill still went on grinding. To this very day, the mill lies at the bottom of the sea, grinding salt. And that is how the sea became salt. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you again soon. Au revoir.